Thank you, Libby. Thank you, Jake, and afternoon, everybody. I acknowledge I'm actually recording and hosting this on Gadigal country. Also, would like to acknowledge just traditional custodians on the other various lands upon which all of you might be meeting, and obviously pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in the webinar. We are discussing today's issues, men's issues, given it's Mental Health Month. We are going to be discussing issues of mental health and suicide, and we would obviously encourage anyone to reach out for support. If anything in our conversations triggers you, please contact Lifeline 131114. If anything, as I said, triggers any response for you today. Thank you again all for joining. We've got a distinguished panel of guests today. We have John, we have Olly, and we have Barbara. I will go through some of their backgrounds for you, but the idea behind today was really just to show and focus some of the things that are plaguing our community at this present time. We know that 25% of people experience a mental health disorder over their lifetime. 15% experience it in a 12-month period. For people like me, who is bang on the age of 57, we know that we have particular issues. People of my contemporary age group, 50 to 60-year-old men, particularly through COVID. Certainly at CCNB, we have experienced a huge upsurge, and people of my own generation have lost jobs, landed up at Centrelink for the first time in their lives, and have realised how devastating this issue can be for all of us. So as a community, we need to share, men particularly to share, and should be encouraged to share our experiences and make sure that we understand it's a sign of strength. Certainly not a sign of weakness. And today we're very fortunate. John from Mentoring Men trains mentors, on how to engage with men who need help before they spiral into crisis. We have Barbara Stenhouse, manages Northern Beaches Lifeline, their counselling services. Barbara is also a member of the Northern Beaches Suicide Prevention Steering Committee. And Olly is the co-founder of a local running group, or a local group called Vipers Running Club, who's focused on increasing healthy environments for men to talk openly and freely. So thank you, all three of you, for joining today. And thank you for everyone else who is joining. I have to admit, this is my first webinar, so I'm probably going to say and do things completely out of the scope of a webinar, but you can please expect that and be kind. Olly, given that fellow runner, I have to start with you, mate. Please let us know about Vipers. How did it come about? What are you guys after doing, and what are you doing at the moment?
Harry, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and it's exciting to hear a fellow runner, Gary, as well. So Vipers, we're probably a couple of years old now. I think we started mid-2019, and essentially, Gary, it came out of identifying there was a bit of an appetite and a bit of a gap in the Northern Beaches around an opportunity for men to connect in a healthy environment, and to be able to come forth and share their passion, more specifically for running. We know men sometimes need an activity to do together in order to bond them and bind the group, and in our case, we chose running. So we started on a Thursday night a couple of years ago, and we now got about 170 runners that run with us. And we do kilometres together on various days of the week and in various parts of our beautiful Northern Beaches and further abroad. But also we do various, seminars and growth activities and retreats and all sorts of things in order to try and create really well-rounded men. Better runners, of course, but also better husbands and sons and fathers. And it's been fantastic.
And have the numbers grown, Olly, in the last, well, probably 2 years? I mean, I'm not necessarily focusing on COVID, but have you had an experience that more people or more men have tried to reach out through activity or through running?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see the sort of ebbs and flows of the new inquiries coming through. Certainly, in COVID, it's no surprise that some of the inquiries and the motivations behind, on those inquiry forms came through, a lack of connection and wanting to feel like they were part of a community and wanting to connect with like-minded people. But myself and my co-founder, Maddie, Gary, I know he's known to you, we're really determined to grow slowly. We talk a lot about connection versus growth. And we want to make sure, of course, we want to give as many men as possible an opportunity to be part of this great community that we're part of. But we're also conscious that if you grow too fast as a community, those connections within it can be lost. We need to take time to ensure that men are connected further, deeper than just a how are you and a nod, but given an opportunity to illustrate some care to each other, learn about their lives, about their family, where they've come from, where they hope to go. And it's when those connections are strong that, the community as a whole feels really well connected.
Yeah, no, fantastic, man. And if you stop doing intervals on Thursday, I might actually join you one of these weeks. You've just got to run a bit slower. Thank you very much, mate. Barbara, on that basis, and Olly talked about men needing activity to bond. Usually we don't just reach out. What is it with that? What's the biggest sort of challenge that men face getting positive mental health?
Yeah, look, and I just have to put in there, I'm in good company because I'm a fellow runner as well. Running is for my mental health as much as for my physical health. But, I really feel for men, the greatest psychological challenge for them is being a male. It's about what they call masculine socialization, that men are meant to be strong and not show their vulnerability, not to be dependent. And with that, if they're not feeling 100% and want to reach out for support, there's all this shame around it. And Zach Seidler refers to that as male toxic masculinity, that it's the very thing that will stop somebody from actually seeking help is the shame that's involved. So one of the things that we know is that that people, there's more men coming forward, but there's about 45% that are likely to drop out prematurely from before they've really benefited from therapy. And I think that might come back to that feeling of discomfort of showing that vulnerability in the counselling space. So I feel like that self-stigma can be a real barrier for men to come forward and actually seek help when they would really benefit from it.
Yeah, it's a shame. I guess, John, your experience is the same as a coach. What is it that men need? What do we lack, or what do we need to do to fulfill our potential? How do we overcome the stigma?
Well, it's interesting and yeah, good to hear perspectives from you guys. And thanks for having me on. But yeah, look, overcoming stigma is part of it, but in many ways, it's men struggle with life. It's not a crisis of mental illness. It's not brokenness. Men are complete and capable. On any given day, right, we're out conquering the world. The things are like all of us, right? You gather scars and cuts and wounds as you travel through life. And at some point, without some help or some understanding, some extra resources, we get overwhelmed, right? And that's completely understandable. It is perfectly reasonable to be miserable when something awful happens to you, right? And that's an everyday event. But it's the lack of resources or understanding around us, right, that cause us to struggle alone. And it's our cultural barriers, things like stigma. The shame is massive, right? Brené Brown talks about shame as being the #1 cause of male illness, right, as a result of stress in different areas and so on. So it's those barriers that stop us from connecting. So there are 3 things that save a man. It's belonging to something, it's having relationships with something, so connecting to something, and it's feeling like we're worthwhile. We have a contribution and a growth, right? Mm. So the key to keeping a man safe, and in fact keeping anyone safe, but particularly men, because we're terrible at seeing these opportunities ourselves, right? Because we've been told it's not masculine, it's not the right thing to do to actually fix some of these things, right? So the key to keeping us safe is to help find opportunities to belong. Vipers is a classic, right? All these men are walking in and feeling like they found their tribe. Personally, I can't run out of sight in a dark night, but I've got other tribes out there that will accept me, right? So there's that kind of that kind of belonging will keep a man tethered to something strong when he needs it. And then we can do other things, right? There's relationships, keeping our relationships strong, not just with our intimate. See, men tend to circle the wagons and bring their family close, and then the rest of the world is like, excluded, right? Except for a very few privileged friends. But we lose our friends early and we don't make good ones later, right? Does that make sense? So the sense of you teaching a man to connect with new friends, right? So teaching a man to find new tribes, and then continually giving them a chance to grow is something that not most people don't think about, right? You grow in your job or you grow at uni, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about growing as a person, understanding our values, feeling like we're contributing. What is our legacy? That kind of question. Right?
John, how do people find, how do men, it's probably a question for all of you, but sport, activity, exercise, be it yoga, be it running, seems to be such a male tribe. It's our tribalism. What are the other, and sorry, it's a question for all of you, but what are the other avenues available to men? I was actually asked that about half an hour before this webinar. In a meeting we were having, and I said what I was doing and talking. I said, of course, that asked me because it's about sport. And he actually asked that exact question. What are the other avenues? So what for, in anyone's experience, Barbara, yourself too, what are the other focal points? How do we find these other tribes?
Yeah, it's a great question, Gary, because to be truthful, right, I think there is as many solutions to keeping men safe and well adjusted and well, to keeping our well-being high as there are men and anyone, right? So there's this sense that saying, oh, well, men need, to talk shoulder to shoulder. And that's true, that does help, right? But in fact, like, the golf course is not the only place you can have a courageous and caring conversation, right? You can actually have it sitting down, making eye contact. What is challenging is that has to be learnt, because nowhere in our past, like Olly, I don't know about you, mate, but I was never taught to look another man in the eyes unless I was trying to call him out to the car park for a bit of, to and fro. So, we need to learn new things, new skills, which are about connecting on a different level. No less masculine, right? The courage it takes to open up and be your authentic self in the front of another potential rival, right, is enormous, right? So why do we suddenly call that weak? Well, I think that's that kind of rational lies men tell each other, right? It's weak. I'm not doing it because it's weak, but it's actually the other thing.
Well, in that case, though, does and again, probably an experience, maybe, Olly, you referenced Olly too. So have you experienced in Vipers that running is actually the harmonizing agent that allows men to then go one step further? So we run together, we're both good at it, or we both do something, and that's now taken as read. Does that allow them to leverage? And have you got experiences where people have taken it, as John said, deeper, so are now conversing not about their intervals and their garments, but they're actually talking about things at work and things that are bothering them?
Yeah, and I liked your point, John, around it's the learning of that behaviour, and for men, I feel like, well, I can only speak in our case, physical pursuits, particularly when done with a community or individuals around you, is a great way to form that bond, Gary. And then once men feel safe and have a sense of belonging, to John's point again, that's when we start to see these men open up. We, in Vipers, we are so lucky to every week hear of instances where men have taken it from the oval when they're doing an interval session and taken it into their family lives. They're creating great friendships that are born out of this opportunity to bond through physical activity. The thing I love most about my community are those examples where we see men that didn't know each other before they turned up on a Thursday to run together. They've then gone through that bonding process and they now feel comfortable letting that spill over into every part of their life. It's a really satisfying process to witness.
Can I just add something too? I'm just I'm aware that they say that men, that Gary, you're saying that 50 to 60 year age where men are at most risk of, feeling like they've got mental health issues. And I think that to try to encourage men to tap into their communities before they retire is really, really important. Yeah. And one that comes to mind as just to be an example, like not to be a physical activity, is the men's kitchen, which is a really, like I heard a couple of the CEOs, that they had been previous CEOs, and then they retired, and they took retirement like a job, and they decided that that they'd get involved with the men's kitchen because they weren't particularly good in the kitchen because they had really high-powered jobs. But it was this doing together, something active, that then they started forming really nice connections. So there's so many things out there, like John alluded to, but I think that if we can really encourage men before they leave work to start exploring their communities, so they've got that for when they've retired.
And is there a trick, Barbara, from not a trick, but a first step in accessing help for a man? I mean, I guess from your experience at Lifeline, is there something that we've got to be doing as a first step, do you think, that makes the next step more successful? Is there one or two things that are really critical?
I think there's two things that are really critical. I think the first is for men to believe that the therapy is going to be beneficial for them. So if they actually go along thinking it's going to be helpful, and to that point, I think that then there needs to be that conversation about what do they expect out of therapy in that very first appointment. And I think that that's got implications, because thinking about how discomfort and that self-stigma we were talking about earlier, and the shame, if you get somebody into the room, you can actually, talk to that ambivalence and that potential resistance and what they're wanting. And I think that's a really important first conversation. But the other thing I think is there needs to be a really good fit between the client and the therapist. And that may take a couple of sessions. It may, and the rapport is so important as part of therapy. But it's what Zach Seidler's, some of his research has shown, is that of the men that have accessed therapy for the first time, a quarter of them have just dropped out and not re-engaged. So I think, again, that's important that we normalize that it's okay to try a few different therapists before you find that good fit. And so we just normalize that it's not just got to be right the first time, that you can always shop around until you find somebody that is on the same page as you.
Yeah, and Gary, sorry, I just think it's really important now to build on what Barbara was saying, right? So in the world of therapy, men do have this tendency to feel like it's not serving them, right? So, and whether that's because of what they bring in and what carry, or whether it's because of the nature of the service, right? But there is a whole nother level, which is growing in importance. It's being recognised in some of the big reports that have come out, the Victorian Royal Commission and the Australian report to the Minister on Suicide, which is about peer support and lived experience. Now, men really respond to another bloke telling him it's okay, right? So in my circumstance, right, just if I can share a little bit, I lost my wife. I was in the middle of a fairly, understandably sort of grim place, right, with my family. And it was only through the fact that another man who I respected and was surprised at when he told me this said, "Mate, if I was you, I would be going to see someone." And that unlocked for me the access to a therapist, right?
Mission,
the interesting thing about the proof is that it is really effective on many levels to start with peer support. So mentoring men, our whole model is that one man can have a really caring conversation that is therapeutic, even though we're not a therapist, right?
Yeah, I guess that's exactly thank you, John, for raising, because I guess that was my next question to all of you again was, do men generally have, a problem with the word therapy or even with the word mentoring? I presume not, because you're a successful organization, but is there languaging? And Olly, I think your experience, when I run with the same 12 or 14 people, it's my tribe, it's our tribe. perennially the same thing. And our conversations have gone from, have you changed to, the 245 Garmin to how you're dealing with, situations. And there's no question that we've got onto a different level, and the group's not just men. So I guess you get different insights. But do we have label problems as men, mentoring, therapy, interventions, or is that a problem that we have now overcome?
I can speak for my community, Gary, and I feel like I believe our community plays quite a big role in men understanding what therapy and what professional help is available to them. To give you an example, and Barbara's aware of this, we put 75 of our members through the accidental counselling course with Lifeline, one of their trainers, last month, and the objective there was for them as a community, as a group of men, and a trusting group of men, for us to go and jump that fence together and to start to explore that side of how, of help available to us. That was set up through Northern Beaches Council. So a really great example of how this network is working, and where this cyclical support is coming into action. But, for me, that was a really important step in saying, as a community, we're now going to go and understand what's available to us. From them, we've had a great deal of, anecdotal stories coming out from various members saying that they've accessed, we do go and see a counsellor once a week, or I do see a therapist. And to John's point, when your peer is all of a sudden, or men that you respect are all of a sudden coming and saying, hey, look, you should know this has really helped me, all of a sudden it becomes something that may well be on your own radar.
Yeah, and then that's a tribalism, John. I think you talked about it before. I think that the tribalism for men is really important. It is actually the bond. If it's condoned, if John's mate says to him, the guy that, I aspire to be a better runner, runs better than me, says it's okay, then actually, you know what, I'll do the same thing. So I think it's condoning the things that are, in a sense, for us, a bit anathema as men, suddenly become, why can't I? Is there something that as first step for probably John or Olly in that group, and Barbara, from your professional experience as well, like if somebody is reticent, is there something that we as men can do that makes it just easier for them to get help? I mean, something we can say, something we can do, something we can act like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, I would offer, so it's interesting, 3/4 of suicides are men, right? That's the horrifying truth. And the numbers over the last 10 years have been horrifyingly increasing as well. So, we're waiting to see what happens post-COVID, but there's plenty of respected individuals who are saying this is going to be a tough few years, right? So, from that point of view, it's really a call to arms for those of us who work in the community. So, as chairman of Northern Beaches Suicide Prevention Network, which is a product of Barbara's the steering group Barbara's on, we're looking and saying, okay, what do we need to do to equip as many members of our community to respond to crises in their midst, right? We're not actually thinking about, these aren't people that are, that are sitting there waiting on a bus stop, looking like they're an emergency, right? These are your brothers and fathers and sons, right? So we want to be able, through Gatekeeper, like it's such a wonderful thing to see, Olly's members, go through Gatekeeper training. And that's the aim for the 44,000 individuals in the Northern Beaches, so that they, when they have conversations, when they understand and have calibrated the wellness of the people they love around them, and they'll see that this person is not himself. And that's when the first thing, the absolute simple thing that we can do is ask the question. We all know what that question is now, thanks to a wonderful marketing campaign from Are You Okay, right? But then I call it, I say it's Are You Okay +2. So from that moment, you then need to open up and say, no, I really care and I want to talk. Tell me something. Right. Yeah. And that quality of that conversation will open up the real issues, right? And it may be at the end of it, the man feels competent and realised he's tapped into his own resources, but it may also reveal that someone needs to do something else. And then courses like the accidental counsellor give us the steps to take then, which is connect with, say, GP and connect with online services. And then, if it becomes a crisis, connect with the emergency services.
No, thank you, Barbara. Andy, has anybody got any questions? I have no idea how you ask them. I assume you don't. You type them and somebody will tell me what you're saying and we'll answer them. But please avail yourselves of the amazing expertise that we have on the camera as we keep going. Accidental counselling, Barbara. Anything else? Anything you want to share with that for an audience who may or may not be aware of it? But are there any other things that are, like male specific, but you think males can actually be doing and to enable us better to have these conversations? Is there anything else that we can do in terms of training or courses?
Yeah, look, I really find the accidental counsellor is really a great way to upskill in just half a day. It's only 4 hours. And it's around the 3 R's of recognising when somebody may not be their normal self. And for a lot of men, they may not divulge that unless you actually ask. And so it's giving people the confidence to know how to check in and to notice that somebody isn't their usual self. And then to respond if they're not their usual self, like to check in. Again, there's a lot of research around asking if somebody has had thoughts of suicide. We know it doesn't plant the seed of suicide, which a lot of people think. So it's about education around what you can and what are good things to actually say. And particularly we know for young people, they're less likely to actually tell somebody that they're feeling suicidal unless they're directly asked. And then there's the last is the referral, about all the different referral pathways and how to tap into resources and services. And we know that that's really important for men to know those pathways. And for instance, most people just think of Lifeline as the crisis 13, 11, 14 number that was mentioned at the beginning with you, Gary. But for Lifeline Northern Beaches, we actually want to encourage people to get support before it reaches crisis support. So having the peer support that John and Olly have been talking about is tremendous. But we also offer low-cost counselling on the beaches, which a lot of people still aren't aware of. And although the suicide rates have been going up, as John mentioned, on the Northern Beaches, because we are looking at numbers as part of the steering committee, and there's been a lot of initiatives undertaken from council, from different organisations like CCNB and Lifeline Northern Beaches and the local health. And we've actually seen a reduction in the last couple of years. But for our own organisation, in the last 2 years, we've had 200% in people accessing our face-to-face individual or couples or family counselling. And it's low cost. And if people can't afford it, we then waiver the fee. We don't want cost to be a factor that stops people from seeking help. So I guess one of the great things about this webinar is that we can actually tell people that there's this low cost counselling which is available. And we even offer youth counselling up at the Avalon Hub for free. And so we really want people to
make themselves available. Yeah, I guess there's
Exactly.
There's no shortage of it. I guess it's the signposting, and there's a question in the text about motivating. Eliza's asked more broadly of the suggestions. Any thoughts, John, Olly, Barbara? Any?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting process, right? So the motivation goes back to the sense, the what I call the circle of despair. So the idea of relationship, belonging, and contribution and growth, right? So motivation is a values-based thing. So when you are working close to what is important to you, when you get more of that in your life, the quality of your actions are about doing stuff that you love or find important, right? When you do that, you are highly motivated. So if you want to motivate a man, give him a mission that he believes is really important, right? So one of the things about this sense of hopelessness is we've been pulled out of some of the things that we used when we weren't engaged at work, or where we don't really think of maybe our everyday activities as a mission. But there are plenty of missions men need to get, and they do that by belonging, by connecting with people who also share that vision, right? And so what we need to do is expand men's understanding of what is important. Many men won't be able to tell you what their values are. They might say family, but how, right? Is it growing your family, looking after them, feeding them, whatever it is? There's a lot of work in that space. But if you find out what is important to you, you are going to be motivated, because when you think of that, you want to achieve it, right? It's a simple but very often misunderstood element, right? But of course, moving towards that is also an anchor to keep men safe. Now, all the therapy and all of that stuff is necessary. It's a wonderful process. But many of our risks are daily activities. They're situational distress. We're not walking in with a mental illness. We're walking in with we've just broken up with our wife, or we've lost our job. Men identify with these things externally, and when we have that external impact, we're really struggling to make sense of that. If I grade myself and my existence by my position at work, and suddenly it's gone, as is the case with so many of us, more wise individuals, right? So,
it's slightly older than the other people, John.
More life experience.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, suddenly everything I know about me and every way I measure myself against the world is gone. The shame is such an important element. The fear, just simple fear. So the more we can spend time at the love end of that spectrum, by feeding ourselves, by feeding the mission, by changing the world one good deed at a time, right? That's when we're safe from and motivated. I guess. I know I'm sorry, carrying on a bit.
No, that's quite okay. No, that's very, very valuable. Has anybody got other, there's a question in the chat. I'm presuming everyone can see what I can see, but if not, just let me know. Is there any other, Barbara, have you found, for example, I know at CCNB, we found, and it relates to your last point, John, around men wanting to contribute and doing so by volunteering. Have you found the same, volunteering, maybe yourself, Olly, people that, when I say volunteering, it's not in the traditional sense, but a volunteer to do things that they wouldn't normally do, or are volunteering in a more figurative sense around, helping at CCNB or helping at Lifeline. Have you had that experience, Barbara, of more of late, people wanting to or being prepared to give up of themselves, give up of themselves more than before?
Well, I think that because of COVID, it's been difficult for people to actually be volunteering, but I know that, like, I've been down to talk to the bookies. What's one of our major fundraisers to support our counselling and the services we do is our book fairs. And I've told them about where that money goes and how we utilise it for our counselling services. And I get such an impression that volunteering is, that altruism of helping others, but they get so much and they're connected with each other. But there's a great sense of community when people volunteer. We know that volunteering's really good for the mental health and really good for feeling like you're contributing, just like John was saying, and giving some meaning and purpose to the day. So I do think that now that people are more, with the restrictions easing, that we will see, people starting to really want to get out there and help. But we've seen so many examples of goodwill in COVID, and a lot of people, I think it's been an opportunity to normalise people talking about the effects of ISO, and it's been so much more isolating. And just to give you an idea, because I always think that our crisis hotline is a bit of a barometer for what's going on in the community. It's a national number, but we used to get across Australia each day pre-COVID about 2,200 calls a day to Lifeline. And then at the peak of COVID, we were getting 3,600 crisis calls a day. So there's obviously been a lot more distress in the community. And I think that that's because of really the impact of isolation. And so, you know, the opposite of isolation is connection. And I think that's the kind of the underlying theme that I'm hearing today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Talking about connecting, Movember, John, there was a question for you. I'll come back to you in a sec if you wouldn't mind, the one about chronic alcohol abuse. But Olly, your fundraiser in November, you'd like any wisdom, any sharing? What are you guys up to?
Yeah, to Libby's point, the moustache may have given it away. I apologise for this. Yeah, we choose November every year to be a real anchor in our charity work at Vipers. We're very lucky that you know, the engagement within our community is so high that we often, well, this year we have got about 115 of the members taking part, and essentially at the end of November every year, well, this will be our second year, we run various distances, but the longest one being a 60-kilometre run from Bondi Beach to Manly Beach, along the newly instated Bondi to Manly Walk, which we all know is such an asset to our community. And we want to raise $100,000 this year. And I think we've just tipped over close to 80,000. And with the run coming up next Saturday on the 27th, we're in some good territory to reach our target. But yeah, again, it's an opportunity to contribute to John and to Barbara. To your point, I feel like that's really strong at the moment. People are wanting to feel those good feels that we get when we feel like we're contributing and making a difference. And yeah, Movember is a great organisation for us to put some energy and effort into at the back end of every year.
And Olly, are you going to divulge that there's also a 10 and a 30K option apart from the 60, or are you just going to leave that one for other people to figure out they can only do half of it?
No. There's a 10-kilometre option. So the boring details are, 60 from Bondi, 30 from Kirribilli, or 10 from Clontarf. Yeah. We're all finishing at Manly, and I'll run from Kirribilli, I think, 30 kilometres.
I was going to say, yes, there's a lot of temptation going around our little circle about who's prepared to do the 60. People don't know. It's a lot more than 18 kilometres more than a marathon.
Those kilometres compound for sure, yes.
So, I don't know if you guys want to get a room on this one, but it's all good. Gary, I just want to respond to Eliza in the chat. She says, those things. I would say keep the communication is essential, and there's a lot of things that you can build up to get people back engaged. But the thing is, help him find a tribe. It could be anything. You know, Northern Beaches Men has 1,000 guys online. They don't talk every day, but they know they're there, right? And I did see also after Olly's moustache was the reason they clued onto you, mate. But Deborah asked, mentoring work includes men with chronic alcohol abuse and so on. And absolutely, right? Where you're like AOD issues are really symptoms of a life that is a bloke is misunderstanding what is resourceful for him, right? So, and it can be, trouble adjusting to a transition in life, or it can be a way to anesthetize the pain. All of those things are part of living, right? And mentoring is just about another bloke offering a space for a guy to be real. Mentoring is about a guy caring for another guy. And that in of itself can transform a bloke to know that some man, he may never have had a good word from a father or a male role model. And suddenly here's a man who's putting time and love into that relationship. And it's really transformative. So I would recommend it. In terms of numbers, we've gone from, in 2 years, we've now got over 1,000 men engaged in mentoring men activities of various types, right? So, and we're looking, we're growing all the time. We're looking to build community-based models that support mentoring, because one of the questions is like, I think mentoring is the missing peer support for blokes at the moment, right? It's really an opportunity to close the gap on what we're needing, because so many of us feel lost or stuck. And I think that's part of the solution. There's no one magic bullet, but that's part of the solution.
Look, thank you for sharing all of the insights. Is there anything, as I go around the Zoom room this way, Barbara, any We've got 3 or 4 minutes. Anything you'd like to share in conclusion?
I just feel like we just really want to normalize that help seeking is and showing that vulnerability. I think the language is really important, like we were talking about earlier. I think we can reframe that as a strength rather than being a weakness. And I think that that if that experience when they enter, you know, that therapy space is really positive and affirmative and is going to utilize a strengths approach. And so I think that the way that you know, the therapist can kind of really engage men and not inadvertently shame them further, you know, from being the therapist in the room. And I think that therapy is changing. It's not what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you. So we don't need to pathologize necessarily. It may not be helpful to do that. So I feel like, yeah, that the nature of therapy has changed in the last decade or so to be a much more positive, strengths-based approach for people, which I think men will be more attuned to.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that, John. Any lasting thoughts, conclusions?
Yeah. I would just, you know, like with all of these things, you know, there's you know, myths and truths, right? But in the end, it comes down to each individual guy just taking a step into the unknown, really, sometimes, about saying, look, I'm going to start opening up myself to others. And when that happens, everything can make a difference. At the moment, most blokes are trying to take on the world with half their resources, right? We use our head, but not our heart. And they were meant to be used together. So, you know, nice. Let's bring those things together and, you know, just risk opening up and seeing what happens.
A nice comment. Thank you, mate. Olly, you want to end it all? Tell us some sage advice for a Friday.
Oh, geez, I'm on the spot here. For me, I'm a young male living on the Northern Beaches, and it's been one of in the last few years since I've really decided to lean into the community and start to really explore just what kind of quality of humans there are in the community that are a resource to me, to your point, John. And it's been one of the most satisfying processes of my adult life. It's now the community, more specifically the Northern Beaches community, is in my thoughts very shortly after I wake up in the morning and I roll into bed at night, thinking about how I can contribute to my own community. And men need a mission, again, to John's point, and I found mine. And it's been a totally life-changing process. And yeah, I'm very fortunate now that I walk around with a smile on my face a lot of the time, knowing that I feel like I'm really contributing to my community and letting it fill my cup up. And yeah, I feel very privileged to be in the position that I'm in.
Lovely way to finish, mate. Good job.
Great words, mate.
And good words. Thank you, Barbara. Again, thank you for your time and expertise, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, John. Thank you, Olly. Libby, I don't know if I'm supposed to hand back to you or nothing, but if I am, you'll ring me and you'll tell me to do that.
Gary, you've done a wonderful job today. Thank you very much.
Thank you all, guys, and thanks again for your time and expertise and for sharing your thoughts with us. We do appreciate it. Have a nice weekend and stay safe.
And thank you to CCNB. What a great I love being a CCNB volunteer, and it's fantastic to have an organisation like that on the Northern Beaches.
It's our pleasure, mate, and thank you again for all your good work, all of you. Take care, guys. Have a good weekend.
See you.
Cheerio. Bye.